Welcome to the closing plenary session of the Parliament of the World's Religions. We will begin shortly. We're just giving a chance to close the air wall, and as soon as the room is ready, we will begin.
Please take your seats. Our program is about to begin. Please welcome the Chair of the Board of Trustees for the Parliament of the World's Religions, Nitin Ajmera.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Jai Jinendra. I stand here in front of you. They call it a closing. Boy, I don't think it's closing. It's the awakening. In the last 5 days, we've all come together, celebrating humanity, celebrating each other, trying to understand the perspectives, the positions, the viewpoints. We've looked into each other's eyes and said, yes, together we can do it. We've had great programs. Luminaries of all kinds have come up and spoken here on this podium. But it doesn't end today. And in the next 2 hours, it's not about goodbyes, nice meeting you, it was fun. It is about what we carry back. Because 7,000 plus people were here in this plenary. And again, I've not finished counting yet. But we need to take more than 7,000 stories back and tell to our communities what we achieved in the last 5 days. Those messages are very important because the world wanted us to be part of their representation. And they are having a great time reviewing our news stories and the coverage that media has provided us. And then we ourselves, through our Facebooks and tweets and Instagrams, have told the world what a beautiful place it is and how we can all make it better. In the next upcoming 2 hours, you'll hear from great luminaries that will carry that message that you will all take back as ambassadors of the Parliament of the World's Religions. Jai Jinendra.
Please welcome President of the Fetzer Institute, Bob Boisture.
O Lord, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in thy sight. What a joyful honor it is to be here in this glorious culmination of this amazing Parliament. It's an honor to be able to share some thoughts with you. But before I do, I just, on behalf of all of us, want to express a huge word of gratitude to all of the people who have made this happen. What an amazing labor of love, and what a huge gift to us and to the world. You've seen our name, the Fetzer Institute, around all week, so you may be curious about who we are. And a brief introduction can also be helpful here in letting you know where I'm coming from in the remarks I'd like to share. From a corporate point of view, we're a U.S. foundation, but I think the truer description, the one that animates me, is that we are an inclusive, spiritually grounded community of love and hope. We're located, headquartered 2 hours east of here in Kalamazoo, Michigan. We have a beautiful conference retreat center there. I hope in the future we'll be able to welcome many of you. We are a staff community of about 70 because we have a conference center that includes a wonderful culinary team and facilities team, operations team. And I say that because it is the context in which we work what we view as, in our little microcosm, the central challenge facing the human family. How to be in radically transformative, spiritually grounded relationship across all the dimensions of our difference. For the last 10 years, we've taken a morning a week, and we've brought all 70 of us together to live into that challenge. Our mission is helping build the spiritual foundation for a loving world. Our guiding purpose is to support each other in awakening into and serving spirit for the transformation of self and society. We've learned over those 10 years that we have to walk and chew gum at the same time, that there are two challenges that go hand in hand. The first is finding and deepening our spiritual common ground, the foundation on which we then go out into the world with this audacious mission. But the second, equally important, is honoring, indeed celebrating the fact that we get to that spiritual common ground on radically different paths. And we need to support each other in going deeper on our individual paths and open to each other to be enriched by others' paths. And that brings me to the reflection I want to share that's been growing in my heart all week. When I got here, I got the same registration package you did. It had this beautiful, thin booklet, Towards a Global Ethic, a foundational statement adopted by the Parliament 30 years ago when it resumed after 100 years hiatus. It's a beautiful, compelling statement. It suggests a common bond that draws us together. But as I've moved through this week, I've had this growing sense that what really draws us together is something much deeper, much more profound, much more radically transformative. It is our shared experience of the sacred. It is, I think, a shared sacred story that animates each of our lives. I'd suggest that each of us lives within the riches and depth of our own tradition's particular story, but that at this moment in history, we have to celebrate, embrace, and bring into the world the shared sacred story that unites us all. At Fetzer, we've come to a verbal formulation that we recognize, even as we say it, as profoundly inadequate, because our experience of the sacred is ultimately beyond words and beyond concepts. But the best we've done, and I think it's pretty good, is that we, Fetzer, are drawn into community by our shared experience, that there's more to reality than material reality, and that something more infuses our lives, indeed infuses the cosmos with deep meaning, purpose, sacred connection, and calls us to a life of love. Why do I lift up story? Because truth be told, we don't live at the level of ethical consensus. We live within our stories about the nature of things. And we live in a world where the dominant story that drives the incredibly destructive global engine we've created is a radically different non-sacred story, a materialist, secular story that denies that deep meaning, purpose, sacred connection that counsels self-interest rather than love. And the second truth, at least from my perspective, is although we all live within sacred stories, and we probably recognize that shared story, we're not out in the world shoulder to shoulder bringing that sacred story to confront this dominant, destructive, secular, materialist story. And what's the effect? I think, unfortunately, we have denied spirit a strong voice. Our smaller voices tend to cancel each other out. They're true, they're rich, we live within them, they give us life, but in the great contest of our time, they're losing. And so this session is a call to action. I'll recall that this Towards a Global Ethic, I think presciently is subtitled An Initial Declaration of the Parliament. My hope and dream and prayer that I'd like to leave with you this afternoon is, could we come back together at the next Parliament and celebrate not just our ethical consensus, but the transformative shared sacred story we have about the radical transformative power of opening our hearts to the sacred mystery. That's a story on which we can build a world and a life that's truly one of shared flourishing. Thank you very much. Blessings on all of our work.
Please welcome back the Executive Director of the Parliament of the World's Religions, Reverend Stephen Avino.
I'm sure you're sick of seeing me, but I'm here for one more speech. Way back before the pandemic even began, in that prehistoric, seemingly prehistoric era, I was reading John Henry Barrow's book on the 1893 Parliament, and I thought to myself, the 130th anniversary is coming up. So I reached out to Reverend Vance Henry in the city of Chicago. I spoke with the different faith communities. I talked to our board, and it became clear that everyone was hungry for the Parliament to come back to Chicago. And I stand here today overjoyed and happy to have been with you guys for the last 5 days. There's a lot of people to thank for the last 5 days. I'll start with my amazing staff, our three Miriams, Miriam Kizada, Miriam Belinsky, and Miriam Renault. Emma, Susan, Flynn, Danny, Ian, Emily, Jesse, Nisha, Muriel, and Shannon. And last but not least, Molly, who actually started the same day as me 11 years ago. She left for a while and she's come back, and it's been clear she's a vitally important member of our team. They've worked so hard for hours and hours for almost a year and a half on this event, and had to deal with the unfortunate software issues we had on Monday. And I want to apologize to all of you for that. We did not see that coming. And but the way that my staff handled it was graceful and admirable. And let's give them another round of applause. Like I said, there are so many people to thank. I could stand here for hours and hours. I'm not going to do that, I promise. But I want to thank my partners in crime in this, Nitin Ajmera and Phyllis Kurat, and the incredibly supportive board of trustees that I have, our circle of patrons, our speakers, our presenters, our sponsors and donors, all of you in the audience today, and the amazing folks at Seraphin, the work of our vendors, Congressman Rush and our host committee members, Mary Nelson for hiring me back in the day, our volunteers, and my loving, supportive family who are here today, who instilled me with a work ethic to get this done. So Sunday evening, I took a boat cruise with many of you. It was a lot of fun on Lake Michigan. It was actually the boat that I worked at in college. And I started to think about how much has changed since I became involved with the Parliament. It's truly amazing to see all of your smiles and all of the joy of coming back together after some of you have been to all of the parliaments, all of the modern parliaments at least. And that's the beautiful thing about the Parliament, is the people that you meet, the people that change your life, that give you hope, that really fill your heart with joy to see. But make no mistake, we are in a bubble. We spent the last 5 days in a bubble, and it was a good use of time. It was a really good bubble, but it's a bubble. In order to make actual change in the world, we have to get outside of this bubble. My great hope for the last 5 days is that you bring what you've learned and bring it to your own communities and make some real change in this world. Lake Michigan, right outside here, and Lake Huron together are the world's largest body of fresh water. All of you got to go outside in the last 5 days and see how beautiful it is on the terrace. It has been the source of drinking water for 40 million people. And even looking at it, I'm filled with awe and wonder. It's truly sacred, as is our planet. But unfortunately, we do have a crisis. You learned about it this week, but you've learned about it for the last 20, 30 years. We need to do something about this crisis. We need to make changes now. My niece is in the audience, and I don't want to give her, actually my niece is, I don't want to give them the responsibility to clean up our mess. We cannot wait any longer. We need to divest from fossil fuels, and we need to respect that everyone has the right to a healthy environment. I also hope you've learned this week how religion is being misappropriated all over the world to upend democracy, to divide us all. In 1893, Chicago was a boom town, and people were saying things like, this is the end of an era, that the world will be peaceful now. Let us not be so naive. Let's not walk away thinking things like that. Like I said, we are in a bubble. Within 20 years after the 1893 Parliament, World War I would break out. Don't let evil take over this world again. Don't let evil convince you that communities of color, the LGBT community, immigrants, are the problem. Fascists are here to divide us and conquer us, and we as people of faith have to stand up and say, no, we will not accept that. We all need to protect truth, we need to protect voting, and we need to protect our pluralistic society and love our differences. The kingdom of God or goddess is within you. We all learned from Jesse Jackson last night, we are somebody. We can make a difference. We can go out there, we can create, we can change the world, and it's time. In fact, we have an opportunity right after this parliament to do so, to make some difference. And I'd like to bring up Reverend Alvin Bibbs to talk to you a little bit about that today. Thank you and have a safe trip home.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Reverend Alvin C. Bibbs, Sr. I'm the Chicago Outreach Manager for the One America movement, which we're laser focused on dismantling toxic polarization around the world. And all of us has an opportunity to do that. Friends, Chicago has had over 12,000 new migrants arrive from the southeast borders. We have been walking and loving upon them as a welcoming city and are helping to provide food, shelter, community, housing, and major resources. Tonight we have two large-scale community back-to-school events to prepare our new neighbors for school starting on Monday. Yes, you can clap on that. So friends, we would like to have you join us this evening as we provide an opportunity to bless over 400 of these new migrants at two different locations here in the southwest side of Chicago. We're gonna have Disney characters, we're gonna have ponies, we're gonna have petting zoos, we're gonna have reptiles and games and food and free backpacks along the way. And friends, the bottom line is that we're gonna love up on our new neighbors tonight like never before in the city of Chicago, and we need your hands, we need your help. We're gonna have buses, yes. We're gonna have buses that's gonna be leaving the McCormick Place at 5:15 this evening at gate 31. Don't just meet me there, friends. I want you to beat me there. See you later tonight. God bless you.
Good afternoon. It is my special honor to bring warm greetings to the Parliament of the World's Religions from the Congress of the United States. I want to say a special thank you to my friend, Congressman Bobby Rush, who for 3 decades offered a prayerful and powerful voice for justice in the House of Representatives. While we sorely miss his leadership in the Congress, we are proud that he continues his service to his Chicago community through his church. And allow me to commend you, all of the devoted faith leaders gathered for this meeting, to reaffirm your commitment to democracy, freedom, and human rights around the world. We gather a pivotal moment in world history as a battle wages between the forces of freedom and fascism, between liberty and tyranny. The fight for freedom in the world is the fight of our time. Whether heroic Ukrainian forces repelling Russia's unlawful aggression, brave pro-democracy advocates speaking out against Chinese Communist Party suppression, courageous women protesting against repression in Iran and the Taliban in Afghanistan, and so much more. And here at home, freedom is under threat. Shamefully, there are those who pray in church on Sundays and prey on families the rest of the week, from ripping away health care and food assistance, to denying the sacred right to vote, to attacking Americans simply for whom they are and who they love. These challenges are a call to conscience for every person of faith. Indeed, we believe that we are all God's children, and we share a moral responsibility to protect the precious spark of divinity in every person. But as you know, it's not enough to merely discuss these issues behind closed doors. Faith and action are inseparably intertwined. With democratic institutions and human rights under siege, we must all remain committed to using our voices and our votes to be the change we seek. On a personal note, I'm proud to hail from the beautiful city of San Francisco, named for St. Francis of Assisi. And we often draw strength from his immortal words, preach the gospel, sometimes use words. As you return to your communities at the end of this session, may the words of St. Francis inspire you too as you continue your faithful service. Best wishes for a prayerful, meaningful, and successful meeting. Thank you.
Please welcome former Chief Rabbi of Ireland, currently serving as Special Advisor to the Abrahamic Family House in Abu Dhabi, Rabbi David Rosen.
Good afternoon. It's a great honor to be invited to be part of this call to action that concludes this Parliament, though I must claim being a little bit at a loss, because what we have been doing throughout these days has been precisely a call to action. So perhaps I could just offer a takeaway from the source that so many of us here share, from the Hebrew Bible, from Psalm 34. Who is the one? Come, my children, listen to me. I will teach you the reverence of the Lord. Who is the person who seeks life, who celebrates life, loving days to do good? Turn from evil and do good, seek peace and pursue it. The ancient Jewish sages 2,000 years ago noted that seek peace and pursue it is a very unusual language. Nowhere do we find any instruction to both seek and pursue anything other than peace. They say seek it in one place and pursue it in another. And we might translate that to mean that peace is more a verb than a noun. It is something of constant pursuit, and that one can never rest on one's laurels. We might note, as many of you know, that the word shalom, peace, comes from the root meaning whole. Whole within ourselves, whole in our relationships with others, whole in our relationship with the divine. This psalm, however, is telling us a great deal more. Let me pick up from the inspiring words of Mr. Boisture. The theme of this Parliament, to defend freedom and human rights, is not something that is unique to the Parliament of the World Religions. There are many bodies that seek to advance those ideals. I would even suggest that that's not the reason the defense of freedom and human rights, as important and as sacred as they are, that's not the reason why we are all here. I would even suggest it's not the reason or the original motive of why the Parliament itself was founded. The motive behind us being here, I believe, for the vast majority of us, if not all of us, whether we are religiously affiliated or not affiliated, or even if we're rebelling against an institutional religion, we are here because we recognize that there is more to our existence than purely the material. There's more to our world than purely the physical dimension. There is a spiritual dimension that we seek, that we wish to cherish, that we wish to nurture. And this psalm is telling us that if that search for spiritual meaning is really authentic, then it must lead to concrete action. That spirituality is lacking authenticity if it does not lead us in an ethical direction. That the global ethic text is precisely the imperative that must flow from our respective spiritualities. That if we really cherish that ultimate reality that the text refers to, if we really cherish that divine presence, then we must turn from evil and do good, seek peace and pursue it. And above all, that means affirming the dignity of each and every human person, regardless of race, color, creed, or orientation. And it is precisely the defense of freedom and of human rights that facilitates that authentic respect for human dignity. An ancient sage of the Talmudic period, Rabbi Tanhuma, said, any act of disrespect to another human being is an act of disrespect to God. And thus, ipso facto, when we truly defend the dignity of other, we are in fact defending the dignity of the divine. And this is the charge that we must go away with, to teach our communities, to educate our respective traditions, that if they are authentic to their spiritual aspiration, they must pursue the ethical imperative. And the psalm finally tells us one more thing, one last thing. Yes, the defense of freedom and human rights is something above all for governments and for policymakers, and we must do our best to influence them in that direction. But it is not just for governments and policymakers. As indeed Stephen has just reminded us, each and every one of us can contribute to that transformation. Because turning away from evil and doing good is something that each of us can do. The pursuit of goodness for each of us, no matter how small a drop it may be, will contribute to a rivulet, to a stream, to a river, to a sea of the knowledge of the divine that can transform our world. This is our charge. This is our heritage. This is our responsibility. May we be worthy of it. Thank you.
Please welcome Senior Advisor on Forests and Climate for the Interfaith Rainforest Initiative of the UN Environmental Program, Charles McNeill.
Good afternoon. In the plenary event this week entitled An Urgent Call to Protect the Amazon, we learned that conserving tropical forests is essential to protect our climate and nature. We learned that the Amazon rainforest is one of the most critical elements of the Earth's climate system, generating enormous amounts of rainfall and strongly influencing weather patterns all over the world. We learned that it plays a critical role in fighting climate change by holding billions of tons of carbon, which would otherwise be released into the atmosphere with deadly consequences. We also learned that deforestation in the Amazon rainforest is at a dangerous tipping point that could transform, that could degrade rich forests into dry, grassy savanna with profound impacts on the world's climate, food production, human health, and well-being. In short, we learned that protecting the Amazon is everyone's business, perhaps most importantly, those of us here today, faith communities. This week, we heard directly from many inspiring and courageous Indigenous leaders who are on the front lines of protecting the Amazon, including the new Minister of Indigenous Peoples from Brazil, Sonia Guajajara. We were reminded that to sustain the Amazon, we must recognize the rights of the indigenous peoples who have been responsibly stewarding these forests for centuries. And they face serious threats and attacks today for defending the Amazon from predatory and destructive interests. And we heard how central, in fact, inseparable, indigenous peoples' cultures, traditional knowledge, and spiritualities are to the protection of forests. We discussed how the United Nations, together with the Parliament of the World's Religions and other interfaith groups represented here, created the Interfaith Rainforest Initiative, IRI, as a platform for action on the protection of tropical forests. And we reflected on the coming together of religious leaders and indigenous peoples in common purpose and joint action through IRI programs in Brazil, Colombia, Peru, Indonesia, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and how they had created powerful and uplifting new coalitions to protect forests and forest defenders. Notably, all Parliament participants were invited to endorse a call to action to bring your spiritual resources, your commitment, your influence to bear on these issues. And to that end, we will now see a short video that was produced just last week for the Head of State Amazon Summit that took place in Brazil, and for this very Parliament. This was displaying the important work of IRI in the Amazon. Thank you very much.
The majority of people in the Amazon have a religion or spirituality that they follow. The sacred duty to care for nature and people is a value that unites us all. Imagine millions of people from different religions, traditions, united around one purpose: to be allies and defenders of the Amazon. The Interfaith Rainforest Initiative is mobilizing religious leaders, scientific organizations, social and environmental entities, indigenous peoples, and the United Nations to join forces to end deforestation and the fight against climate change, and to defend the rights of indigenous peoples and traditional communities. Acting now is a profound ethical and spiritual priority. Current development models based on the predatory exploitation of the Amazon's natural resources and the violations of the human rights have to end. A new model of an economic, environmental, social, and cultural sustainability is needed to realize peace and prosperity for the Amazon and its people. The Interfaith Rainforest Initiative is working in Brazil, Colombia, and Peru to create an interfaith movement that contributes to this change with actions that have already reached millions of people. We raise awareness in religious communities about the urgency of halting deforestation and addressing the climate crisis. We aspire to creating a new environmental citizenship, one that is committed to the protection of forests and the environment. We bring the forest close to the people and make them aware what is important.
Uma experiência muito bonita, muito emocionante, porque é uma experiência de uma beleza tão grande e o que toca no coração é pensar como a gente pode destruir uma beleza dessa.
We also train religious leaders, equipping them with scientific knowledge about forests and climate change so they can contribute to the restoration of the Amazon ecosystems, the preservation of biodiversity, and the protection of forest defenders so they pass this knowledge on their own communities.
A oportunidade oferecida pela IRI de estabelecer um diálogo positivo e construtivo entre religião e ciência tem sido muito valioso.
The Interfaith Rainforest Initiative has an extensive network of local action coalitions in regions where the forests face the greatest threats. We are building an innovative movement across the Amazon, cultivating a new consciousness among the population about the importance of acting individually and collectively to protect forests.
Trabajamos para facilitar el diálogo y la cooperación, así es como juntos actuamos por una Amazonía sostenible en las regiones que más lo necesitan.
We mobilize religious leaders to influence environmental legislation and public policies for the Amazon at the local, regional, and national levels to encourage public authorities to adopt, enforce, and expand up their commitments to protect the region and its population.
Estamos creando conciencia para el cambio, aportando nueva influencia para exigir políticas que protejan el bosque a largo plazo.
The Amazon is at a crossroads, a serious moment of an existential proportions that requires nothing less than a transformational change, bold leadership, and deeper cooperation. We are the Interfaith Rainforest Initiative. We bring the unique influence, mobilizing power, and reach of religious leaders to bear on efforts to realize a sustainable Amazon. Participate and support ROI. Partner with us, because without the Amazon, there is no future.
Please welcome Venerable Shin de Yuan.
Dear respected guests from the Parliament of World Religions, good afternoon to all of you. 60 years ago, my teacher, Dharma Master Cheng, received 6 words of instruction from her mentor, Venerable Sun, for Buddha's teaching for sentient beings. From that moment until today, this brief instruction has been the direction of her life. In May of 1966, she established the Buddhist Compassion Relief Merit Associations, today known as Buddhist Tzu Chi Foundation. The organization started with 30 housewives who each save 50 cents a day from their grocery money to help the poor, plus income from Master Cheng and her monastic disciples making baby shoes. From these humble beginnings, the mission of Tzu Chi grew from charity to medicine, education, humanistic culture, disaster relief, and environmental protection. And its footprints has now reached 128 countries around the world. Master Cheng often tells us that caring for the world requires the joint efforts of many people. when everyone can come together to give a little, whether effort or funds, we can gradually bring purity to people's hearts and peace to society, and the world can become safe and free from disaster. Let us now sincerely listen to Dharma Master Cheng Yen teachings.
这种的不调和的天气，自然的法则，大地被破坏，因为人的意念越来越大，所以我一直说来不及了，来不及，来不及怎么办呢？挥手不可，挥束不可，挥推不可。
老板，你愿不愿意就明天啊？早餐也好吃素。
想要讲啥？这个地球哦，已经在快烧啦。
感恩你一起如素护地球，感
恩。许许多多的国家，就是因为气候变迁，带来了人间的不调和。在尼泊尔佛陀诞生的地方，他们在亚热带，热比其他国家更热。苦，贫富差距很高，这个地方也是期待去翻转。
बेरोजगारी है, काम धंधा नहीं है, तो यहाँ बैठते थे तो मांगते थे, तो उससे मतलब कि खाना चलता था। कभी कभी नहीं आया तो बैठल हैं, वो या नीम के पेड़ देख रहे ना, नीम के पेड़ छाँव में जो सब बैठ जाते थे। जब पार्टी लोग आया तो ही दुआरी पर मांगना शुरू।
那我们有就是跟他说，如果实际在帮助你，那你以后就不要去行乞好吗？他就答应我们。那我们觉得这个老人家很有心。
खाने बनाने के समय कितना निकालते थे? कितना मुट्ठी? कितना एक मुट्ठी, दो मुट्ठी?
ना
एक मुट्ठी। आपको पता है चावल का क्या होगा?
अभी नहीं, हम दान किसी के देंगे।
过去呢，手心向上。 要一个呢悲苦的脸相，人家给他帮助。现在呢，站起来，双手向下，脸已经呢是笑了啦，而且呢，把这样的心转过来，双手这样的莲花啦，在无染。 美的莲花盛开了啦，所以展开了笑容。同样一个短短的时间，翻转过来。
谢谢马来西亚，谢谢苏西。
宗教本质啦，只有一个字，爱啦。同样是平等，这样的人间苦难就可以呢，慢慢转贫啦，为富。
For you。
所以啊，不管哪一个宗教，一个目的 就是净化人心，祥和人间，这就是人间净土。那这么大的愿力啦，出自于一念心，你的心，他的心，我的心，共同呢是一个方向的一念心，这都是呢我们心灵的方向。所以我们要把握这一生，我们共同为人间来净化人心，这就是大道。
When every one of us share the same heart, we can head in the same direction and accomplish what we aspire to do. Let us seize our time in this life. Let us work together to cleanse people's minds. This is the path we can walk together. Recently, the Hawaiian islands of Maui faces one of its most devastating tragedies. Raging wildfires has destroyed historical Lahainau town landmarks, rendering hundreds unhouses and leaving thousands without power. Let us pray for the speedy recovery of those who have affected. Thank you.
Please welcome the Executive Director of the Parliament of the World's Religions, Reverend Stephen Avino.
For those of you who've been to a parliament before, you know that every parliament we give out the Paul Karras Award for Interreligious Engagement. This award is given out to those who practice outstanding interreligious engagement and is named after our scholar and visionary Paul Karras, who was instrumental in the 1893 Parliament. Today I'm blessed to have on stage with me Mr. Blau Karras, grandson of Paul Karras. Blau, would you like to say a few words?
First of all, thanks a million for all of you coming to this incredible event. As inclusive a group as you've ever seen in your life. This is, from our point of view, this is a call to action, which we're looking for everyone to do. And my particular call to action is because of my grandfather and the other leaders of the 1893 Parliament. The 1893 was an incredible event. It was something felt as exciting and emotional and emotion to action as much as this is, or even more. They were felt so strongly about it they didn't want to stop meeting. And the leaders of the parliament, representing many, over half of the participants, wanted to meet again. So Charles Bunny, and John Barrows, and my grandfather, Paul Karras, did everything they could in the next 20 years to reconvene the parliament. But the powers that be would not allow it. In London, Paris, wherever, there was an international meeting. They tried. And that was one of the great frustrations of my grandfather. So fortunately, the Vedanta religious leaders read about this, heard about it, and recognized its value and continuing value, and they called everybody they could get their fingers around it, their hands around it, and communicate with, to start meeting again in 1993. So thanks to the Vedanta religious leaders. And with that, With that, we think this is a very exciting event, and we really thank the Parliament and the Parliament's committee to select the routes for our Paul Karras Award. Thank you.
Thank you, Block. With that, I'd like to, as Block just said, give the Paul Karras Award this year to the Roots organization.
We are extremely, extremely grateful for this award, the Paul Karras Award. I'm here with my partner, Khaled Abu Awad, who is the Palestinian co-director of Roots. I am the Director of International Relations. Khaled and I come from the Holy Land. But life on the ground in the Holy Land is anything but holy. Jews and Palestinians live in geographical proximity, but actually in two separate worlds. There is so little connection between them. Between the two sides, one finds ignorance and prejudice, resentment, fear, hostility. And further, Jews, my people, have all the power, and Palestinians suffer from deep institutional neglect and discrimination. People are dying almost every day because of these conditions. For 33 years, I had lived in the Holy Land but had never had a real conversation with a Palestinian. For all these years, the Palestinians for me were like the gray, drab scenery that passes in the background of the movie, my Jewish movie, but they're not part of the plot. They were transparent, or I was blind. I lived as if my story, my Jewish story, was the only story in the land. There was no other story, no other people. Today, I hope that I know better. After 9.5 years of deep and difficult, painful and productive, challenging and cathartic interactions with my Palestinian neighbors and partners, I know that there are two peoples in the land, two stories in the land, and to live your life as if there's only one story and to live your life as if there's only one story is to mistake part of the truth for the whole truth. I don't want to be there any longer. About 9.5 years ago, Khaled, myself, and others founded Roots, the Israeli-Palestinian grassroots initiative for understanding nonviolence and transformation. Roots created something almost unheard of, a joint Israeli-Palestinian community center where local people from the two sides come together almost every single day for social activities, educational activities, and religious activities. It spans the gamut of interfaith dialogue, religious celebrations, photography workshops, trauma workshop, learning the other's language, culture, religion, and politics. And furthermore, we also focus on activism, trying to make Palestinian lives better on the ground, legal issues, freedom of movement, sewage, building rights, and more. 90% of the thousands of Israeli Jews and Palestinians who come to our programs have never, ever met the other side. They come with their anger and fear, with their prejudices, traumas from lives lived in the shadow of violence and attacks. The first thing that happens is humanization of the other. He or she turns out not to be the demon that we imagined. We discover a human being on the other side. We're surprised that they're human just like us, and often we are embarrassed that we're surprised, but we're still surprised. Humanization is difficult,
At the beginning, cognitive dissonance is created and then unsettling empathy. The process begins almost immediately at the first meeting, continues, but it takes a while to sink in. But that's not the end of it. There's a second level, which is the recognition of the national identity of the other side. Israeli Jews and Palestinians, by and large, construct their identities upon the erasure, the nullification of the other side's identity. Both sides think they can tell the other side who they are. Israeli Jews say there's no such thing as Palestinian. Never was a Palestinian state. They're just Arabs, so let them go back to Saudi Arabia where they came from. And the Palestinians say the Quran greatly respects Judaism, but it's a religion, it's a faith, it's not a people. You don't need land, so go back to Eastern Europe where you came from. But after you listen to the other side, tell the stories about who they are for weeks and for months, you begin to realize that you know nothing about who they are. You have to listen, and it's so hard to listen. You have to listen and let them tell you who they are, and then they may listen when you tell who you are. The Jewish, Israeli, Palestinian participants in Roots have learned that there's such a thing as the Palestinian people, that there's such a thing as the land of Palestine, and the Palestinians belong to Palestine. And the Palestinian participants in Roots have learned that there's such a thing as the Jewish people, and there's such a thing as the land of Israel, and the Jewish people belong to the land of Israel. And here now is the most excruciatingly difficult, the most gut-wrenching, the most ostensibly traitorous thing. The borders of the historical land of Israel and the borders of historical Palestine are the exact same borders. Both peoples, I say both peoples, belong to the same piece of land. And you know what? No one's going anywhere. Neither people is leaving. Our message, the message of Roots, is that both Jews and Palestinians belong to the same land. We both recognize the other side's identity and the other side's belonging to the land. We must find a way to fit two peoples into one land, and that begins with fitting two truths into one heart. According to our understanding, the political conflict between the Jewish Israelis and the Palestinians is at its core a conflict over identity. In order to solve the conflict, we must each overcome our hubris of exclusivity and learn to accept and recognize the other side's identity and their rootedness in the land. Through our grassroots, people-to-people peace building, Roots is preparing the human hearts for a future political settlement founded on equality, freedom, human rights, dignity, and security for both peoples in that little sliver of land that we both call home. Thank you. Thank you very, very much.
Please welcome policy advocate at Protect Democracy, Chris Crawford.
We do not all start from the same place, but we're standing together now, and we have to stay together and march forward together. These are the words that Bishop William Barber said to me a number of years ago, and I'll never forget them. You see, I started my career working in the pro-life movement in North Carolina, and I'm still proud of that work. But some of the organizations that I worked with later used their power to pursue discriminatory legislation. Bishop Barber led the opposition to that effort. When I met him in 2017, I apologized to him for the harm that was caused. With a great deal of grace, he put his hand on my shoulder and said those words, "We don't all start at the same place, but we're standing together now." I want to talk to you today about how we can all stand together in defense of democracy. At my organization, Protect Democracy, we believe that to defeat an authoritarian, you have to be able to bring together a broad coalition of people who might have big disagreements on politics or policy, but who are willing to come together and prioritize the defense of democracy. I know it's hard to build that type of coalition and put aside disagreements because I'm Catholic. Catholics are really bad at putting aside disagreements on anything. And while I'm a person of faith, Protect Democracy actually is not a religious organization, but we are here because we know the crucial role that faith communities play in building this type of coalition. And it's a coalition not just to defeat one temporary strongman, it's one to build defenses to stop any future one as well. My organization was founded in response to an immediate crisis, but we came to realize that preserving democracy is not a 1-year or a 3-year project, it's a generational one, and it takes all of us. And I mean all of us. We've learned as an interfaith community that building effective coalitions is not about minimizing our differences or watering down our beliefs. It means listening, understanding, and welcoming people to bring exactly who they are to this moment in this movement, so that together we can prevail on the most pressing of issues. Here's what I believe. I believe in democracy because I share a belief with many of you across religious traditions that every person has human dignity. I believe that we are each made in the image and likeness of God. I believe that of all the different forms of government, democracies are the best way to protect human life, ensure human flourishing, and prevent abuses of power. And I believe that we, as communities of faith, have a unique role to play here. Religious communities have the social capital and organizing infrastructure to take action. Our leaders are often some of the most trusted leaders in our communities. And having a meaningful religious grounding can help us take action despite long odds or even threats. I'd like to talk briefly about a hero of mine, Fannie Lou Hamer. She was a sharecropper from Mississippi, a poor black woman, and she loved Jesus. During the 1960s, Mrs. Hamer challenged the local Democratic Party in Mississippi that was run on white power, and she co-founded the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party. She challenged Jim Crow voting laws. For this, she was the victim of state-sanctioned violence and even assassination attempts. Mrs. Hamer's testimony at the 1964 Democratic National Convention was so moving that President Lyndon Johnson held an impromptu press conference at the White House to try to take the cameras off of her. That move backfired. Mrs. Hamer was not going to be stopped, and a year later, that same president signed the Voting Rights Act into law. I bring up Mrs. Hamer because her speeches featured two main elements: sacred scripture and the US Constitution, because she was driven by faith, and she understood faith's power to inspire, and she also believed in institutions that can recognize all of us and our dignity. There have been entire books written about faith-based efforts to resist authoritarianism, but what I invite us to take back home with us is this: the next chapter is being written right now, and it's being written by us. It's easy for us to wonder whether our contributions can meet this moment. You might be sitting there like me saying, this week alone was exhausting enough. But I mean it when I say each of us has a role to play, because protecting democracy does take big, bold action at pivotal moments. But it also demands consistent, dutiful, ongoing activities by everyday people who can hold our societies together. To support that effort, Protect Democracy is partnering with Interfaith America on a playbook for how US religious organizations can take action during the 2024 election. If you've seen me this week, I've given you one of these. I don't want to take them back to the airport, so if you see me after, take one of these so you can sign up for this project, or go to interfaithamerica.org. That is interfaithamerica.org. I'd like to close where I began, with my conversation with Bishop Barber. There are still many big issues on which he and I might disagree. I've been to enough events this week that I know there are many ways that many of us continue to disagree. In democracies, we can have those disagreements. We can fight for what we believe in and operate within a system to compete for the hearts and minds of our fellow citizens. If we lose that ability, we lose everything. Every freedom that we enjoy, including our religious freedom, rests on a foundation of free and fair elections and the peaceful transfer of power. Our ability to advocate for issues we care about rests on the existence of pluralism and democracy. Even our ability to practice our faith without coercion or punishment is a fundamental freedom protected by democratic values and the rule of law. We cannot take that for granted. No matter where we started, no matter how far apart we seem sometimes, we must find a way to come together. We must find a way to march forward together. It's been a blessing to be with you this week. Thank you.
Please welcome international lecturer on Jainism, Samani Jin Pragya.
वीतरागु प्रणाम, आराध्य को प्रणाम. Respected all the religious leaders, brothers and sisters, whole earth is one, whole sky is one, all humans are one. Same blood, same flesh. Lord Mahavira said, Eka manus sajai. So we walk together, we think together, we sit together, and we live together, we help together, each other. So we are praying Jain prayer. Namo Arhantanam. Namo Siddhanam. Namo Ayariyanam. Namo Uvajjayanam. Namo Loe Savvasahunam. Eso Panchanamukaro Savvapavanasano Mangalanam cha Savvesim Padhamam Havai Mangalam.
I bow to the enlightened one. I bow to the spiritually liberated one. I bow to the gurus, all religious leaders. I bow to the
all religious teachers, I bow to the all monks and nuns on this earth. Remembering their virtues and this mantra, anyone who remembers this mantra with this auspicious mantra, he can get rid of all the sins and attain the auspiciousness in his life. Khamemi savvajive sabbe jiva kamantu me mitti me savvabhuesu veram majjanakenai. I forgive all living beings. May all souls and living beings forgive me. I am friends with all beings, living beings, have no enmity towards any souls. All living beings, forgive me, forgive me. Om Arham.
Please welcome Interim Executive Director of Zonta International, Megan Radavich.
Good afternoon. It is my honor and privilege to be here today representing the more than 26,000 members of Zonta International in 63 countries around the world, working to build a better world for women and girls. As I have met and talked to many of you here this week, some of you have asked why Zonta International, not a faith-based organization, would be here at the Parliament of World Religions. The truth is, I think this week has shown that we all have far more in common than we do differences. Zonta International envisions a world in which women's rights are recognized as human rights. And every woman is able to achieve her full potential. In such a world, women have access to all resources and are represented in decision-making positions on an equal basis with men. In such a world, no woman or girl lives in fear of violence. That is a vision I think we can all support. However, sadly, it is far from reality for most women and girls today. Instead, we see new challenges to realizing our vision for gender equity and have witnessed the rollback of women's rights in many countries around the world. Despite these challenges, the Zonta International community remains committed to that vision. One of the key ways we are working to raise awareness of and take action to end violence against women and girls specifically is through our Zonta Says No to Violence Against Women campaign. The campaign was launched in 2012. At the time, Zonta International was working on several projects focused on ending violence against women in Africa, Asia, Central America, and Oceania, in partnership with UN Women and the UN Trust Fund to End Violence Against Women. Simultaneously, many of our clubs were working on gender-based violence issues locally. But we wanted to find a way to unite our members around the world to use their voices in support of a common goal. The answer was Zonta Says No to Violence Against Women. In the 12 years since the campaign started, it has grown every year. It is raising awareness of the global epidemic of women's rights violations, uniting Zonta clubs worldwide in conducting impactful advocacy actions to fight violence against women and gender inequality, influencing the making and implementation of laws, and changing gender-based attitudes and behaviors to end violence against women. I am personally inspired by the hundreds of examples of actions taken by Zonta clubs through the Zonta Says No to Violence Against Women campaign each year. From supporting local women's shelters in Germany, to training frontline workers to provide gender-responsive services in the Philippines, working to end child marriage right here in the United States, and lighting up communities across the world in orange to bring much-needed attention to the epidemic of gender-based violence globally, the Zonta Says No campaign is about awareness and action. The power and beauty of this campaign is it is global, but it takes place in hundreds of communities in 63 countries. It brings together tens of thousands of individuals around the world to take action to end violence against women and girls based on local context and community needs. We are now gearing up for the 2023 16 Days of Activism, beginning on the 25th of November. And we welcome all of you who share our vision for a world where no woman or girl lives in fear of violence to join us in our efforts. Visit zontasaysno.com and find a Zonta community near you to use your voice to end violence against women and girls during the 16 days and beyond. As we near the end of this Parliament and prepare to go our separate ways, I, for one, will leave hopeful for the future, thanks to the thousands of you that have shown up here in Chicago in solidarity for freedom and human rights for all people. Thank you.
Marched in the streets for centuries, fighting for peace, for a right to breathe. How come we're still fighting each other? Are we who we say we want to be? We say we want the peace, but look what we're doing. How many more? How many more tears? How many more? How many more years? How many more? How many more lies? How many more? How many more lives? It starts in our homes, letting go of egos. Where is the unity in our community? Are we who we really say we want to be? We gotta be the change we want to see in the world. We gotta wake up. We are the ones we've been waiting for. How many more? How many more years? How many more? we have hope. There's hope for tomorrow, hope for a better day. There's hope. 'Cause if we say we're tired of living this way, we'll be the hope for tomorrow, the hope for a better day. Hope. If we say we're tired of living this way, yes, we'll be the change. God, I know you're listening. God, I know you're there. So please, won't you strengthen us? Help us answer our prayers. God, I know you're listening. God, I know you're there. So please, oh please, won't you strengthen us? Help us answer our prayers. You've given us the strength. You've given us the authority, the dominion, the ability. So we'll be the hands and feet. Yes, we will. Yes, we are. Yes, we are. Yes, we are. You and me and you. We are the hope for tomorrow. We're the hope for a better day. We are the hope for tomorrow. Hope for a better day. Hope. 'Cause if we say we're tired of living this way, we'll be the hope for tomorrow, hope for a better day, hope. If we say we're tired of living this way, we'll be the change. Oh, yes, we will. We'll be you and me and you. We are the answer. We'll make the world a better day and be the change. Thank you. Look at someone and tell them, point to them and tell them, you are the answer. Point to yourself and say, I am the answer. We are the answer. Peace and gratitude. Let's move forward. Thank you.
Please welcome the lead violence recovery specialist at the University of Chicago Medical Center, Christine Goggins.
To the distinguished guests of the Parliament of the World's Religion, to my fellow Chicagoans, and to this nation, I am honored to share space with you all today. I address you equally in gratitude and grief. 16 years ago, I lost my best friend, Blair Delane Holt, to gun violence. 16 years ago, I devoted my life to anti-gun violence advocacy. 16 years ago, I began to deeply question, how do I use my voice and my influence for justice and peace? I urge each of you to take the same just stand. We as a nation have to prioritize humanity. We have to interrogate the falsehoods and misconceptions about personal safety that promotes gun violence as the preferred method of conflict resolution. Gun violence, thank you. Gun violence is a public health crisis that needs the utmost attention. Violence has plagued this country since its founding. It's always been the American way. Gun violence is now the leading cause of death for all children and the leading cause of suicidal deaths for Black children. This is unacceptable. Our children do not deserve this. We do not deserve this. This is not a you problem. This is not a they problem. No one is immune to gun violence. This is an American problem. Every human life is precious. The blood being spilled in our streets is liquid gold. We have lost our way and devalue human life so greatly. In May of 2018, my passion for advocacy and my career aligned when I joined the Violence Recovery Program at University of Chicago Medicine. The Violence Recovery Program is a hospital-based intervention program that supports victims and their families impacted by violent injury. We engage patients during admission and post-discharge to promote comprehensive recovery and reduce re-injury risk. We do this by providing trauma-informed care in the crisis intervention space when the patient arrives to the hospital from the scene where they were injured. We address safety concerns, provide medical updates, or death notifications to the patient's next of kin. We work with our internal teams and community partners to provide case management to the patients and link them to resources they will need to make a comprehensive recovery. The hospital-based intervention model is still in its infancy, but research shows that this model is effective for helping patients in the golden hour or in the immediacy after injury where someone is likely to make change. We have to continue to do more research about the beliefs around gun violence and gun culture. We have to look at the effects of injury and interventions over time to really understand. We have to implement evidence-based practices and practice-based evidences. Most importantly, we have to uplift the voices of the survivors and those at highest risk of injury. They have the answers. Some cases haunt me, while others give me hope. Every day that I've sat in the family consultation room to give a medical update or a death notification, it takes me back to the day Blair passed away, when I was sitting in Christ's hospital room, waiting room, hoping and praying that he will pull through. I've since supported hundreds of patients and their loved ones through the worst moments of their lives. Hope and justice have transformed me as much as I have over the 16 years that I've been in this fight. I do not have all the answers. In fact, I probably have more questions than anything. My heart breaks because this fight is so complex. We have such a long way to go to identify all the solutions. We have to have frank and accurate conversations about how systemic racism in this country has created the dire conditions ripe for violence. Chicago is a city long plagued by racial violence and segregation, which are both still alive and well in policy and practice. My sweet Chicago has seen the largest housing, school, and mental health facility closures in the nation. Disinvestment and displacement have maintained the oppressive systems and gross lack of resources and opportunities. People are lacking basic human needs, the most foundational being housing. Maslow's hierarchy of needs tells us until basic needs are met, we cannot address the complexities of human experience, including radical love and self-actualization. People are dying every day in this country to feel safe and protected. This is not the behavior of a developed nation. In the 50s and 60s, motor vehicle crashes were the leading cause of deaths for Americans. The public health approach worked to significantly decrease the number of automobile deaths with interventions including driver education, safety equipment in cars, and mass public reminders about safe driving. This approach works, and it can help decrease gun violence. We have to take the blame away from the individual and address the context, all of the factors, the system as a whole that leads to violence. We are in a state of emergency, but I believe that peace is possible. It may not happen in my lifetime, but I know that the work that I am doing will contribute to the cause. I'll leave you all with a call to action to figure out how you can be a part of the solution. Create brave spaces where you discuss power and privilege and the harm it causes and the healing that it could create. Educate yourselves on your beliefs and the beliefs that are different from yours regarding guns and gun violence. Urge your public officials and lawmakers to enact common sense gun legislation. Most importantly, remember the names of those slain from gun violence, like my best friend Blair, and the bereaved loved ones left here to mourn. Help us to honor their memories by creating a world for everyone that does not have the looming threat of gun violence. Thank you all, and God bless.
Please welcome author, activist, and co-founder of Red Letter Christians, Raw Tools, and The Simple Way, Shane Claiborne.
It's been a great week. I have the privilege of working with a group, a movement called Red Letter Christians, and we get our name from the Bibles that have the words of Jesus highlighted in red. We like to say we're trying to live as if Jesus meant the stuff he said. Gandhi was asked about Christianity, and Mahatma Gandhi said, "I love Jesus. I just wish the Christians acted more like him." We want a version of Christianity that looks like Jesus again, that loves like Jesus, that creates good trouble like Jesus. And for too long, Christians have been better at worshiping Jesus than following Jesus. We've promised people life after death, while people are asking, is there life before death? We've used our faith too often as a ticket into heaven and an excuse to ignore the hurting world we're living in. So it's time for a spiritual and theological renewal in this land. I grew up in the evangelical church, and we love our guns. Christians are the biggest gun owners in America, the biggest champions of guns. And yet Jesus said, "Blessed are the peacemakers." So I was invited here this week with one kind of particular role, which was to bring a bunch of chopped up guns. Many of you took the hammer. We brought pieces, over 500 pieces of chopped up guns, and we've been turning them into art and garden tools. This cross that I'm wearing is made out of a barrel of a gun. And of course, we are inspired by that vision of the prophets, Micah and Isaiah, who talk of beating swords into plows and spears into pruning hooks. The great Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel has kind of opened up my imagination about the prophets. And he says, sometimes we think of the biblical prophets as if they were fortune tellers trying to predict the future. And he says, but that's not it. The prophets weren't fortune tellers. The prophets were truth tellers. And they weren't trying to predict the future. They were trying to change the future by waking us up in the present and saying it doesn't have to be this way. When you look at that scripture that talks about beating swords into plows and spears into pruning hooks, it ends by saying, nation will not rise up against nation. People will learn violence no more. But what's so beautiful is this vision of the future doesn't begin from the top down, but from the bottom up. The peace that the prophets speak of doesn't begin with the kings and the presidents and the politicians. It begins with the prophetic people of God who have had enough. And it's the prophets who lead the politicians to peace. Change comes from the bottom up. It's those prophets that said the people begin to beat their swords into plows. They had had enough. and they turned metal that was crafted to kill into metal that was crafted to cultivate life. And it's a declaration that all things can be made new. This shovel that I have, many of you, hundreds of you have touched this shovel this week, and it's made out of a gun. I tell my evangelical friends, this is what a gun looks like when it gets born again. And what we've been saying this week is that metal can get born again, and so can people. Someone who is killed is more than the worst thing that they've ever done, and God can transform all things and make all things new. So we're dedicating this plow that many of you have touched to the Parliament, and we're declaring that we are a part of a movement that is about the transformation of the world. All of our religions have been distorted and perverted and manipulated to justify hatred and violence, to camouflage hatred. As one of my mentors said, all you have to do is twist the cross and you get a swastika. And we've seen that done over and over. But we're here today, as Martin Luther King said 50 years ago, he said, these are extreme times that we're living in. And the question isn't whether or not we will be extremists, but what kind of extremists will we be? Will we be extremists for hatred or extremists for love? And the world has seen enough religious extremists for hatred. And I think the world is longing to see people of faith who are extremists for love. It's been a gift to be here. Thank you so much.
Please welcome African Indigenous leader Lokowua Margaret.
Mata, Mata, translate into greetings, and I bring you peace and good gesture from my people. My name is Lokowua Margaret, as already mentioned. I come from Uganda. I lead the Women's Organization of Indigenous Women, and I'm also currently a member of the expert mechanism on the rights of indigenous peoples. I recognize the leadership of the Parliament of World Religions. I also recognize the linguists, religious persons in your various capacities, indigenous leaders, ladies and gentlemen. I acknowledge the ancestors of this land in which the gathering has been taking place. I am truly humbled to be part of this great gathering, which has brought people of goodwill to come, share, learn inspirational knowledge from one another. And I also thank the previous speakers for the knowledge they have given us, their nourishment, which I know is going to change each one of us as we return back to our journeys. I have been fascinated by the theme of this year because it's a very important aspect of humanity. It gives cognizance to the importance of conscience in human existence. Secondly, it underscores the central role that conscience can play in guaranteeing freedom and protection of human rights. A call to conscience defines freedom and humanity. It's a very powerful appeal. Remembering defending human rights is a shared responsibility that requires collective efforts from individuals, communities, and the governments. It is essential to treat every person with dignity and respect, and to work and protect these fundamental values. It encourages people to be aware of and advocate for the rights and freedoms of all, irrespective of their background or identity. Defending freedom and human rights is crucial for creating just and equitable society. These rights are inherent to all individuals, regardless of their race, ethnicity, gender, religion, or any other character. They include the right to life, liberty, security, and pursuit of happiness. Protecting human rights ensures that individuals are treated with dignity and respect, allowing them to express their beliefs and opinions freely without fear or persecution. It also guarantees equal opportunities and access to education, healthcare, and fair legal system. Freedom, on the other hand, is a cornerstone of democracy and personal autonomy. It allows people to make choices over their opinions and participate in decision-making processes that affect their lives. Upholding freedom also fosters creativity, innovation, economic prosperity. As alluded by many, the phrase "a call to conscience" is mostly associated with the landmark speeches of Martin Luther King Jr., which he said have a dream speech where he advocated the need to create a collective consciousness that holds the value of humanity, liberty, and civility. Generally, a call to conscience is the awakening of the inner conscience of mankind to do the right thing in the interest of humanity. It is therefore a reminder of the need for full searching and optimism considering of fairness and justice as the cornerstone of human existence. It emphasizes the personal moral sense of right and wrong, which guides our behavior and actions. A call for conscience emphasizes that as humans, our sense of reasons, decisions, actions, interpersonal connectivity should be guided by the voice of consciousness in our hearts, the wisdom of our faith. Thus, we must listen to our inner hearts, the subconsciousness that speaks the truth in our hearts and that which evaluates our actions and inactions. It's a strong statement urging individuals or societies to stand up and protect these fundamental values. It encourages people to be aware of and advocate for the rights of freedom of all individuals. Such a call emphasizes of upholding human rights principles, promoting equity, non-discrimination, and others. Brothers and sisters, as we embark on our journeys home, let us educate ourselves and others by learning more on human rights issues, historical struggles, and ongoing challenges faced by different communities. Share this knowledge with others to raise awareness and foster empathy. Let's promote inclusivity and diversity, embrace and celebrate diversity, promote towards individuals of different backgrounds. Let us engage in advocacy efforts to push for policy changes that strengthen human rights protection and ensure their enforcement. Let's stand against discrimination. Let us support gender equality. Let us combat human trafficking. Let us promote freedom of speech. Let us encourage peaceful activism. Let us use social media responsibly. In conclusion, brothers and sisters, let's remember the foundation of our society rests upon the principle of freedom and human rights. These values are not just privileges. They are essential elements that define our humanity. As we stand today, defending these ideas becomes not just a duty, but a moral imperative. Remember that defending human rights is an ongoing journey that requires preservation, empathy, cooperation, every act of compassion, every step towards justice, Every voice raised against oppression contributes to the therapy of better world. A call to conscience and defending human rights and defending freedom and human rights, therefore, entails that women's rights should be given priority. It is a known fact that an empowered woman produces an empowered family, which translates to empowered community, and by extending as empowered a sustainable world. Therefore, it is my submission that women too must be a priority when we are endeavoring with this call. I thank you for listening, and may God bless all of us.
Please welcome from Guru Nanak Nishkam Sawak Jata, Bhai Sahib Mohinder Singh.
Dear brothers and sisters, accept Sikh greetings. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. This assembly at a time when we are facing some of the most intractable challenges in our human history is phenomenal and timely because of the prevalent challenges. It is against such a backdrop that we have to consider this parliament's theme, Call to Conscience, Defending Freedom and Human Rights. Sikhs have acted upon this in India for centuries. They have glorious track record of it. Our fifth Guru, Guru Arjan Dev Ji, sixth Guru, Guru Har Gobind Sahib Ji, ninth Guru, Guru Tegh Bahadur Ji, and 10th Guru, Guru Gobind Singh Ji, and indeed all the Gurus exemplified this in an unparalleled way. Sikhs continue to stand up against injustices for promoting their own and others' dignity and honor. Now, and they will continue to do the same for all time to come. They are their Guru's saint soldiers, Sant Sipahi. They never offend, but defend with all their might, without letting go of mercy and compassion, which is the foundation of any religion. I interpret such a call as a moral and ethical appeal, one that implores us to reflect on our beliefs, values, and religious teachings, to guide our actions, to promote justice, compassion, and forgiveness. Such a call to conscience is more than self-reflection. It is about coming together in solidarity as religious people to use our faith to provide a moral compass to address the most difficult issues of our time. A call to conscience for all of us is to be exalted for embodying the highest ideals of our different faiths, to uplift humanity, promote social justice, and create a more compassionate and inclusive world. Two practical actions that we have fostered at the parliament. One, the serving of langar, in all humility, love, and a spirit of hospitality, which is fundamental to the Sikh ethos. We believe the whole of humanity is one family. Guru Nanak, our first Guru, called it Sacha Sauda, a true divine transaction. It teaches us the essence of nishkam, selfless service, of inclusivity, community bonding, spiritual development, and in a way, addressing of poverty and hunger, which should not exist in the world at all. We have begun the conversation and dialogue about the importance of the Peace Charter for forgiveness and reconciliation, which is vital to foster healing and achieving sustainable peace. I repeat, sustainable peace, especially in societies afflicted with violence. It acknowledges past, present, and future injustices, providing healing for forging a better future. It's about moving beyond conflict to a new paradigm underpinned by noble forgiveness with potential to heal trauma, break cycles of violence, rebuild trust and hope, create social cohesion, provide long-term stability, to provide transitional justice, heal broken families and friendships, together with reconciling divided communities and nations. It is the forgiveness that we feel. It is in the forgiveness that we feel the power of God's love. Allow me to quote a verse from our 6 scriptures. Kabira, this is attributed to Kabir, a Sufi saint. Kabira, jahan gyan tahan dharma hai, jahan jhoot tahan paap, jahan lobh tahan kal hai, jahan khima tahan aap. Translated, O Kabir, wake up to this deep truth. Where spiritual wisdom flourishes, there is virtuous and responsible living. Where falsehood holds power, there is wrongdoing, sin and spiritual decay. Where there is selfish greed, there is famine, death, and destruction. And where there is forgiveness, there is God Himself. The 2 profound acts of serving of langar in the marquees and presenting the peace charter are our humble efforts towards answering the Parliament's call to conscience. The peace charter calls upon all people of faith and none, and those in governments and within the United Nations, to join us in a movement of forgiveness for reconciliation, which is the only way of achieving sustainable peace in the world. Surely, God commands and urges us as His children to seek global peace and prosperity for all, leaving nobody behind. Thank you.
We're all here together for one simple goal, the goal of leaving our Earth a better place than we found it.
We are running out of time to do the right thing. We're running out of time to do what is not just morally responsible, but perhaps even more importantly, the only morally acceptable thing to do in our generation, which is to ensure that generations to come have the livelihood and the well-being that we have been able to enjoy on Mother Earth.
A human being is what you call the chosen ones. The ones out of all creation who are chosen to do good to the rest of creation.
It can seem overwhelming and scary when we think about climate change, when we think about the issues that my generation will have to face, that we are all facing right now. But there is hope, and there is so much that you can do.
We want to live in harmony with nature. What the world needs is more protection of all natural habitats. Same thing. What we want is more food security, less water insecurity. And what the world needs is this restoration of degraded lands. Same thing. What we want is in those cities that are there, less pollution, cleaner air. And what the world needs is less coal and less fossil fuels. Same thing. What we want is electricity for everyone. 1.3 billion people who still do not have electricity. What the world needs is renewable energy that can provide that power to every single human being on this earth.
We consumed much more than we needed. We didn't give anything back.
So my friends, as we raise our gaze to the true aspirations of humankind, we realize that what we want is what the world needs.
We invite all people, whether religious or not, to do the same.
Please welcome Chairman of the Board and President of Sea Shepherd Conservation Society, Pritam Singh.
Thank you. Recently, the World Wildlife Fund reported that between 1970 and 2020, there was a 69% decline in wildlife. 69% of mammals, birds, amphibians, and reptiles gone. That means they're dead. That means they're dead. To me, the fifth directive says, I have to take care of life. And the directive is not a suggestion. The directive is not a conversation. The directive is a written order. It's an order written in my heart, and it's written in your heart. And every human being, when they're born, has that directive written in their heart. The question for all of us here and everyday human beings is, what are we going to do? The world, the natural world, is dying. It's dying. We're killing it. We have to stop. When will we reach, each individual one of us, the moment of obligation? The moment where we make the decision to have a transformative commitment. Our motto in Sea Shepherd is conservation in action. Our motto is not conservation in conversation. Although I must admit, we have a lot of conversation in Sea Shepherd. But our goal, our challenge, our oath is to try to do what we can in action. Our organization takes the fifth directive very seriously, and every single one of us tries to act on it every day. Our organization is like an ambulance service, an ER, an emergency room, defending marine wildlife. And yes, we have caused as human beings so much destruction, but there is hope, absolutely, positively, if we take action. Let me tell you a story about some actions that's being taken right now. In the upper Gulf of California is a species called the vaquita. The vaquita are the single most endangered marine mammal in the world. And it comes about from one simple reason. Fishermen use nets that ensnare the vaquita and drown them, and they die. And it's also for one simple reason, that there's a fish called a totoaba that the fishermen illegally catch and sell to cartels, which are armed with automatic weapons on their boats and are in the Gulf. And every day, people who have written in their heart this directive go out on ships and get between the fishermen and the cartels, and joining with the Mexican Navy, prevent the death and destruction of the vaquita. 3 years ago, the vaquita was predicted to be extinct today. But this year, in a survey, it was found that there had been no decrease in the vaquita in 3 years. We are determined to be there every day, as long as it takes, whether it's 1 year or 10 or 20, to protect this species, the smallest porpoise in the world. We have a world to protect. We all have to go on the front lines, however we can, in whatever capacity we have to take action. This directive of caring for the earth is not a suggestion. It is an order, just like it is a commandment. And we have to take action to do it. So please join us, come together in your own way, and let's please save this planet, which is our mother. Thank you.
Please welcome founder and president of the Green Hope Foundation, Kekishan Basu.
Hello, everyone. I speak to you today as the youngest trustee of the Parliament of the World's Religions in its 130-year history. Thank you. And as the chair of the Parliament's Next Generation Task Force. And it has been an honor to be able to share this space with you for the past 5 days, where we've been able to meet people from all across the world, from different faiths, cultures, traditions, spiritualities, but all of whom have one thing in common, and that is our love for one another, for humanity, and for our Mother Earth. 130 years ago, Swami Vivekananda had given his clarion call for peace and harmony, calling for an end to bigotry and fanaticism, hoping that the inaugural gathering of the world's faith and thought leaders would bring forth a new social order, one that was just and equitable. And yet here we are, more than 100 years later, where we have to realize that, unfortunately, we've not been able to fulfill his clarion call to action. And in some instances, we might have even regressed even further than we were 100 years ago. We are living in tumultuous times, one where we see issues of complexities and a magnitude that we've never witnessed before, that have the potential to derail the progress of human civilization and push us towards Armageddon. Overconsumption and environmental degradation are making our Mother Earth an increasingly broken and unlivable planet. And the irony is that these issues are caused by us, whether that's the triple planetary crisis of climate change, pollution, and biodiversity loss, or systemic inequities that discriminate against people of color, the LGBTQIA+ community, women and girls, indigenous peoples, or the multiple war zones, be it in Ukraine or Syria or the Horn of Africa, or the rise, the ugly, ugly rise in radicalism and fascism, or just the world going backwards instead of forwards to a place where it might be a place of no return. But given that all of these issues are human-made, there is still hope that we can rely on human ingenuity and find an elixir to combat these issues, drawing on compassion, love, empathy, all of these values that form the foundation stones of our faiths and traditions. So as we move forward from this Parliament, I would like to urge all of you to reflect on the learnings from this Parliament, from the theme of this Parliament, and just understand that no matter what our faith or tradition or lack thereof, we are, after all, human. And it is that humanity that we need to harness to build forward better. It is time for us to introspect. What is the legacy that you want to leave behind for your children and their children? Would you not see a problem and take action beyond what a corporate guideline mandates? We are living in these tumultuous times because of our apathy, and we need to do away with that apathy, because failure to act is quite literally our extinction. It is the cost of our survival. But there is still hope if we come together to join hands, to love, to empathize, and together we can create a world where no one is left behind, and everyone, that includes us as human beings, and all life on earth, everyone has a life of dignity. Thank you.
Please welcome back the Chair of the Board of Trustees for the Parliament of the World's Religions, Nitin Ajmera.
Well, I was told very early by my principal in school, never start a speech with well, but I had to today. I feel that way because the work ahead seems so long, but in the heart, I carry your love with me because I know it's possible and we will be creating a world that is going to be beautiful out there. Jai Jinendra, everybody, as we wrap up this convening of the Parliament of the World's Religions in Chicago, the 130th anniversary of the 1893 Parliament and the 30th anniversary of the modern Parliament and the 30th anniversary of the Global Ethic Proclamation. I thank the Lord for giving me the energy for standing here in front of you and representing love, harmony, faith that we all have. I thank my parents for giving me a culture of respecting everybody and treating everybody with equal respect and love. I thank my wife who's standing outside, and many of you would have met her as she was eagerly and desperately waiting to meet all of you in person. And I thank my son to be my yardstick, explaining to me how I can be better at whatever I do. But it would not be possible. This convening would not mean anything with empty halls and empty corridors and empty rooms. You, the people, have made this convening the most successful part of our effort. I celebrate all of you, and I thank you for giving us your time so that you can get the messages that we want you to take back to your communities. I highly appreciate this entire closing ceremony was dedicated to all Circle of Patron donors, those donors who have given us a good amount of money, cash, whatever you call it, but something that supports because they believe in us and we believe in them. Thank you from deepest of our hearts to all the donors for making this possible. Our sponsors, our exhibition booth people, our luminaries, our speakers, our panelists, our moderators, our singers, our performers, you helped us put this together that gave each one of us an experience that we will talk about. When I came to Melbourne in 2009, I said, I will never not miss another parliament. And I thought maybe it was only me. But there were many people that I met during the last 5 days this was their first parliament. And they're all like, Nitin, when is the next one? Where are we going next? When can we meet again? And I said to all of them, we're working on it. We do not have an announcement to make. Sorry, gentlemen and ladies, but we will come forward very soon where we are going to meet again. But until then, we work together. We work in our communities and we carry the message. I would also like to thank the city of Chicago for allowing us to be part of their culture. To all the Chicagoans, thank you so much. And thank you for really welcoming us in your city and giving us a space, because it is a proud moment when I say to people, the Parliament of World's Religions is based out of Chicago, the state of Illinois. It gives me a great pride in coming back here, and thank you for that. McCormick Center, its management, its staff, for everything that you did with us, amazing, thank you. But I would really like to give out a shout out to their janitorial and cleaning department, because every morning this place was spotlessly clean. The show strategy people who put up this stage and all the setup, thank you for listening to us. I would really like to thank the prime electricians for giving us all the electricity that we wanted. And my real shout out to my friends at the light and sound team back there and LSAV management. You, for the first time in my life, I did not test the mic and my voice sounded the way I sound. So thank you so much for managing that for me. I would love to thank also Seraphim Marketing Management for allowing us to spread our word before, during, and after the convening. And their effort and their guidance was amazing to us. AF Services for providing all the security, thank you. And at this point, the most important people that have made this happen is Stephen Avino and his team of office colleagues. And I would like them to come up on stage here so we can applaud them for all the work that they have been doing throughout the last 1.5 years. Stephen and our office team. Ladies and gentlemen, we could not do it with their painstaking efforts, millions of emails, coordinated questions and answers. They did it. They brought it all together for all of us. And I also would like to reference Jeremy Frackenthal. He's sitting with the audiovisual team. I don't know if he's a consultant with us or an office team member. He's amazing. He put up all the videos and the things that you see on screen. He's the mastermind behind that. So everyone give a shout out to him for all his words. And last but not the least, I was very early told as I became the chair of the parliament, I am the first amongst equals. The trust, the accountability, the responsibility that the Board of Trustees of the Parliament of World Religions has bestowed upon me was a place where I operated from. I represent them. And nothing should I do should ever be felt that this is not the board's message. They guided me, coached me, helped me, and it is because of them, my board of trustees, that we have been able to bring this convening to all of you. I welcome my board of trustees on stage to come up and stand in front of you for everything that we did for this convening. And through various sessions, we brought out the themes of global ethics, climate action, women's rights, indigenous efforts, next generation, peace and justice. My board of trustees, my executive committee, my officers, it is a proud moment for me to be able to represent each one of you. And I welcome you on stage as we say thank you to this beautiful crowd at our 9th convening at the Parliament of World Religions, and an amazing convening that we have been able to organize in the city of Chicago. Yesterday we heard it loud and clear. We are somebody. We are somebody. You, I, all of us are somebody. And when we raise our voices, not in agitation, but to assert ourselves, we need the power of all of us. As various Jain people would say, during this process of bringing the convening, if we have hurt you in any way, through action, thoughts, or deeds, we ask for forgiveness. Michami Dukram, everybody. Jai Jinendra, have a safe trip back, and thank you. And very soon, see you in the next parliament. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you for attending the 2023 Parliament of the World's Religions. If you are planning to board the volunteer buses, the buses are now leaving from gate 26.